Okay, we're going to start the question and answer period now. This is where the speakers get to ask you questions to see if you pay attention. But first we start with Rip Van Winkle. Did you know that Rip Van Winkle, what was he gone? Well, how long were you gone? 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
That was an alien abduction. Think about it. It was one of the early alien abductions. It was gone 20 years. Rip Van Winkle.
And John, don't forget where that took place, in the Hudson Valley.
That's right, Hudson Valley. There you go. Then they came back and they couldn't find him. They would have 13 years with 7,000 witnesses. They didn't know where he was. All right, so you get to ask the questions. I'll answer them tonight. Why don't we start with this question? We'll ask everybody. What do you think about the whole Tom DeLonge, Tic Tac, Navy pilot, all the stuff that's being brought out right now?
Can you explain it when you ask that question?
Okay.
For those who don't know what you're talking about.
What happened in about 2 years ago, Tom DeLonge came out. He said they were forming this group called the Academy of the Stars, Academy to the Stars. And they had some footage from 2004 of something moving very quickly. Then it turns out through WikiLeaks that there's information in there that was divulged. Is that what it's called? It was something like that. But there was information in that came out about Tom DeLonge and the whole thing with Harry Reid getting $22 million in funding from the Defense Department through Robert Bigelow. And then it turns out, as we were doing UFO investigations 10 years ago, we knew the money was coming from Bigelow. We didn't know it was coming from the U.S. Defense Department. So that kind of got leaked out through WikiLeaks. And so what's come out recently, maybe about a week ago, is pilots from 2015, I believe, 14 and 15, that Navy pilots again. It's funny, interesting that this is now Navy pilots. It's not Air Force. The last couple of ones have been the Navy. And there are people like Michael Saller who says that the Air Force CIA is really a smokescreen, kind of like NASA. The real UFO work is done by the NSA and the Navy. But the only thing is that the CIA is in the middle of this whole situation. So basically that's what we got. We got pilots saying, and it is radar, and there is something here that's flying at extreme rates, can stop, can take off, and probably can't be manned unless, if it's human. They got some other propulsion system, they got something anti-gravity. So that's what we got, and so let's just get the opinion here. Do you think this is a slow disclosure to the public to get you ready through the History Channel, or is this just something to get more funding for Trump's Space Force, and it's another take advantage of the UFO crowd? So we'll start at this end and just pass it down.
Yeah, you can use this. Yeah, sorry.
That is a microphone.
I was talking like this, wasn't I? Yeah, what I'm concerned about is the threat thing that this has been tagged with now. The aliens are a threat, because with what I found in the code I was talking about earlier, this looks like it's something that's time related, that it's something that's either from the future or it's an intelligence that is external to our time, space construct, this reality. And the thing is now is that they're trying to make, I think they're going to start indoctrinating people with this threat thing, that aliens are a threat. And they want people to believe that it's like we want to create a new enemy.
I forgot to say these are 30-second answers.
Yeah, because of the good.
That's DeLonge. You should have stayed down pump there.
But if this was from the future or from another an intelligence external to our time, then it wouldn't be a threat, would it? Because it would be us. It would be us. It wouldn't be a threat. And I think that they don't want that out. They don't want that aspect, this time aspect of the whole phenomenon. They don't want that coming out because of that. So.
Well, hello. It appears there's going to be a new paradigm. There's always a new paradigm. It changes every day, right? Perception is reality. That's what reality is. And every one of us have our own perception. No two people share the same thing. Reality is the same. The wife told me to speak louder. I listened. That is my reality. Now, 30 seconds. Things are about to change, and what is going to be changing is managed and controlled. That is dictated, and some things was never changed because it would be chaos possibly. So, there it is.
Don't buy into the hoax. It's a hoax, okay? It's all about control. I agree with you, Jennifer. And I agree with all the other two. First of all, there's so much stuff that doesn't work out with this Lewis dude. Okay? First of all, Air Force spokesman, no, he never worked for TTSA. That's the Air Force spokesman.
You're talking about Luis Elizondo.
Yes. And the other thing is, you don't do a memo for record to your boss to resign. How many people have done that? Memo for record, memo to the Secretary of Defense. Would you do that? No, you do a direct letter. Second thing, you don't sit there and make it a bitch list, okay? That don't happen. That don't happen. You say I resign effective this date, thank you very much. The other thing is, everybody in the Department of Defense, military, whatever, signs an NDA. I signed the NDA. I got a release from that warrant because it said there was nothing classified. I told them to give me that damn copy of that when I retired, and so that's why I'm talking. It's probably not secret, I don't know. But these guys here are pulling the wool over everybody in ufology, and they have a mission, and it's to just discredit the other form of belief. So I think you guys are so smart, you'll never fall for that stuff. I want someone to talk about that, what we talked about. Maybe you could do that afterwards.
What was that, what we were talking about last night? About it being a false flag?
Yeah.
It's a false
That we're being built up to.
Oh, I forgot women. I got Bill Burns up here.
Yeah, how did you, oh,
I forgot about Bill.
I would highly recommend everybody study, you can look at the Wikipedia definition on this one, Office of War Information, going back to World War II, and study how it was aligned with Hollywood. There's even YouTubes on this, and Hollywood was co-opted, and even these people were assigned ranks. So they're in bed with the military, and obviously everybody's trying to steer you one way or another. And we're living in times of upheaval. Astrologers would call it Uranus, innovation. Star Trek technology is 5 years away or less, astrologically speaking. So, we're in for unpredictable and exciting times. And the narrative will have to try and keep up with the reality. It's challenged to keep up with the reality as new inventions happen. But that's all I have to say. This isn't my precise area of knowledge and expertise.
I want to point out two things. One, Jim is right about one thing. You're not going to work for the government in the Department of Defense in a top secret situation, then go public and tell the deepest secrets of where you were working and still have your head on top of your shoulders. I mean, so can we just start with that as a basic thing? Because if Alessandro actually signed a letter, a state secrets letter, signed an NDA, signed a state secrets letter, then turns up in public, I mean, come on. I mean, we're charging Julian Assange from WikiLeaks with stealing a bunch of emails. Alessandro steals some of our deep secrets and basically, so I mean, it's BS. Here's the other thing.
Still works for them.
Years ago, when we were talking about the Phoenix Lights and the giant triangles, one of the things that Aviation Week Rocky Mountain Bureau editor, Bill Scott, told me that the government, just the defense, is so far ahead of the stuff that we see. I mean, it's astounding. He said that they've been working, and Jim can, on neutral buoyancy craft. If you can get a huge neutral buoyancy craft that can go anywhere in the world carrying a large cargo in under 24 hours, not only can you move troops and materiel, but guess who'd be a big investor in that? FedEx, UPS, my God, just think about it. So I think the tic-tac in those things, they're ours.
From the future.
I'm a little bit different than the rest of the guys. I have some contacts at very high places that claim that President Trump gave the okay to release this information slowly. And I think that's what's going on, that Alessandro Mellon was assistant staff or something in intelligence. There was a whole group of people who all had high clearances, and they're all together and releasing this information. Like he said, unless they had clearance, which was coming from the president, they probably wouldn't be doing it. So there's something else going on. The Chinese are on the moon. They're seeing evidence and releasing the evidence of structures and so on. So there's a release coming from various other countries that they may all get together and slowly release the information. I'm also told that at the Mayo Clinic, many of our important factories, there's aliens working side by side with our people. I think the truth is coming out.
Since I am seventh in line and the other six gentlemen are way more connected and qualified than me, I'll talk about something slightly different. I had great hopes for the To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge. I respect him a lot for leaving Blink 182. Did you folks see that last year it was reported they were already $37.4 million in debt? And they've only been around for a couple years. And Tom DeLonge came right out and denied this, but it is from stock options they gave their investors. And so why would the To the Stars Academy even have stock options for investors? So a lot of people, and I've talked to John about it, he was really optimistic about this. They really thought Tom DeLonge is going to be the guy at the forefront that they are basically going to channel this information through. But now, seeing what bad financial shape they're in, I'm not even really sure how much longer To the Stars Academy is going to be around.
All right. I don't know how many of you know me, but I also hunt Bigfoot. All right? Thank you. How many of you watch Finding Bigfoot?
Me.
Okay.
I love it.
What would have happened if they found Bigfoot? The show wouldn't be on no more, right?
Exactly. Right.
So it was on for 6 years.
Right.
It's the same with this. This is a carrot. As long as we get it, we're there, you know, they'll put the thing there, yeah. They never want to find one. Because when they do, we won't be here. We won't be around here no more.
Yep. Right. Okay.
Right.
Wait for the reaction to
What's the name of that show where they're up in Nova Scotia and they're digging for, Hope, there you go. That's going on forever, you know. But I'll tell you a secret. I had lunch with Chris Mellon around last April. And he lives about 10 miles from me. And matter of fact, I recognized him because he came to some of our conferences a couple of years earlier, incognito. And we sat and talked, and he was very believable and says, we don't have this type of technology. He's convinced that this is not of Earth. Fred and I did an episode right after that, or maybe we did it before that, on that YouTube channel that we have. Problem is, when you look at the players and you see how put off some of the other people, it's the same people that worked their way back to NIDS and Bigelow. And when this first was announced in 2017, Bigelow wasn't getting any attention, so he went on 60 Minutes and he said, the aliens are here, and I'm telling you, they're already on Earth, something to that extent, because his name wasn't in there. I think this whole thing just goes back to Bigelow It's the same as NIDS and everything else. And I think this is drone technology, something we have. You know, stealth fighter is 1976 technology shown to us in '88. I mean, that's 40 years old. Technology that's 40 years old. We got something else. And I think this is some sort of anti-gravity something. I don't think it's manned. I think it's drone. And you probably don't know, we have a drone space shuttle that's been out in space since like '09, '08. Are you familiar with that? It's only about 25 feet in size. In 2012, I was sitting there watching the news, and they showed it land on an aircraft carrier and said it was in space for 2 years. It went right over everybody's head. It was in space since 2010. And that's why Obama canceled the shuttle program, because we already had this. So, hey, look, I would hope that this is a slow announcement, but I just don't think it is. Okay, next question.
I've got a question to the entire group, and this is something that I've...
You want to ask who's the oldest up here? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I've often wondered, have any of you been approached by whoever to
Name something.
the government?
Yeah.
No.
Approach
No, no, we don't say the government.
Be specific.
Be
Men in black.
specific, yeah.
And
Government.
women in black.
What's that?
Men in black.
Men in black, what you're asking.
Okay, have you been approached? And I wonder what is keeping you alive and what is keeping your head on your shoulders, because you are speaking about this openly. That's my question.
All right, I'm going to start at this end because I have the mic. Nothing that was UFO related has I ever been threatened or anything. I will tell you, I started out with 2012. That was the first book I wrote, and I did a lot of lectures on that. And I had 4 radio shows where the signal was taken down. Kevin Smith's show twice. And he was the one who called me afterwards and said, John, you realize that somebody was trying to take our signal down? 2 other shows, like Randy Plesser's, possibly if he's here, it might not have been him, we went off the air. And I was doing another show 2 years ago where it just happened to come up in the conversation, and right in the middle of the show, there was a helicopter hovering over my house for about 5 minutes. And I had brought up the it was actually Yellowstone what I brought up. It was part of my 2012 stuff, to talk about the Yellowstone supervolcano. And what we find afterwards is in '06, they thought it was going to blow in '06. That's why when Obama took office, if you remember, they were ordering caskets. The country was divvied up into internment camps. They bought 1.2 billion hollow tip shells for government agencies like the IRS. They thought we were at that end time where they couldn't feed the people. Let's say you'd be on your own, and you got 300 million people on their own. But they really believed that. That's why the whole Yellowstone thing where it was coming up was snuffed. They really thought it was going to blow. But I've never been approached UFO-wise.
Again, okay, I'm from West Virginia. And they come down to damn West Virginia, they won't go back out again.
Because they don't know how to navigate the hollers.
All of the other guys will have way better stories that are far more important than me. All I can add is, I think the question was in reference to the ufologist dead pool, because there's been over 300 ufologists now that have died early, and most people feel like that started with James Forrestal being thrown out of that window at Bethesda. If you read a number of books from UFO researchers, if you think about it like a mountain peak, the most dangerous time for somebody is on the way up when they're doing good things, but not anybody really knows them yet. So they could disappear and nobody would raise any questions. I just read the end of one of David Wilcox's books, and he says, every additional book that I do, every TV show I do, I think it keeps me safer because it gets my name out there and he's way up there at the top. So I think the most dangerous time is people that are climbing up, and so most of these guys are already peaked, so they're safe.
That's so well.
I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you this or not, but well, and I was asked by the CIA to have dinner with him. And it just become Eastern director, and I was putting out a weekly intelligence summary, which you can all read if you'd like. And I was on my way up, so to speak, in publicizing all of this stuff. And they basically said, you don't want to do that. UFOs are not real. They're mainly plasmas, and that people see the plasma and they turn it in their mind to a spaceship. And I said, well, I chased them in the Air Force, and I had them on radar and under control. You know, asked me to intercept, and that Prince Philip confirmed the UFOs are real. And they said, well, if you're going to be like that, you're going to be a lot safer if you're very public. And that's why I'm putting out the weekly UFO files. The point is that there's two groups, from what I've found. One group wants to keep everything secret, and the wrong people get in their way. And there's another group that wants this out. And depends who you talk to, what happens.
I'm going to give you about 4 or so really quick Men in Black stories, personal stories, and then I'm going to split because I got to get home before dark because I turn into a pumpkin. But George Filer is an inspiration. So here's a personal, it's not an MIB story per se, but it is a Trey Lettrich story, a 3-letter organization story. When I was in college, and I'll do this real quick. When I was in college, I was class president, a lot of student leaders got together, and this was in the early 60s. And Timothy Leary had just split from the CIA. And he was coming into New York. I was in New York. He was coming into New York City. And a person who was a student, the head of student activities, administrator, standard college administrator, looked like Don Draper. And he asked a group of us what we planned to do, because he told us that there was going to be a war in Vietnam. This is before the Gulf of Tonkin. He said there's going to be a war in Vietnam. I can go into all night why there was a war in Vietnam, but let's just say that's what he said. There's going to be a war in Vietnam. But he said, what do you guys want to do? I wanted to be in JAG myself. And he said, I can get you into anywhere you want to be in the military. Anywhere you want to be, but you got to do this for me. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, Timothy Leary is coming to New York. We need someone who's willing to defer your going to law school, which I did, defer your going to law school, go to graduate school instead, and you hang on this guy and stay with him because we think he's a threat. So I did that for a year. So that was for that organization. We're shooting UFO hunters. There's this sartorial-looking gentleman, real portly, smoking a cigar, looking just like a man in his full. And he says, and he's like looking at us, and he waves me over, and he says, your show's going to be canceled. Why? And how do you know? And he says, your show's going to be canceled because you guys went to Area 51 and you tracked those Janet Airlines jets as owned by the government, as CIA planes, and then you put a camera down in Area 51 from Tickaboo Peak. They are so pissed at you, you are going away. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he goes, I'm a man in black. And then he tells me this story of how Father Malachi Martin, the exorcising priest, was working for the CIA and a black budget NGO group to retrieve UFO ancient alien artifacts from underneath the Sphinx. Wow, okay? And that really blew my mind. So those are two MIB stories that, you know, I think make a dent, and I got to split at 7:30. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you.
In the early 1990s, there was a lot of fear around the Montauk Project. I was approached. I was actually washing my car in the front yard when some man was surveilling me. I didn't notice it except that my wife and a friend that was coming over for lunch noticed him. And then I looked and yeah, he was doing that. He was not the type of person that would inspire fear in me. You know, his physical stature and whatnot. He was not fear. He was not intimidating. That apparently didn't work. Used to see a lot of black helicopters at that time. There was the black helicopter phenomenon, but what my favorite one was when the Montauk Project was released in 1992, it sold 3,000 copies in about, from May to the end of September. I ordered 5,000 copies. Now at this time I was operating out of my daughter's bedroom. We moved her upstairs and I had this bedroom I was using. So I put the 5,000 books. They were sold out by the next May. This is a lot of movement and it became my full-time occupation. So I ordered 10,000 books. This is a lot. And truck shows up, parked in front of my house, and I have to wheel them all in. And this stealth air fighter, really low. And the driver goes, "What is that? That's the Concorde." I said, "It's not the Concorde." He knew what it was. I told him what it was. It was just like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know what I mean? Like, it was not intimidating, it was cute. It's like you're tying into a stream of consciousness. The black helicopters were replaced by cell phone technology and HARP technology. Anyway, fear was not part of my anatomy. So people get afraid. A lot of this UFO genre feeds on people's fears. It's designed to feed on people's fears. And I could give a whole lecture on the subject of fear and the negative aspects of ufology and why, how to transmute the energy. But that's my story.
Okay, just earlier at lunch or dinner, George and I were talking about the only way to be protected is to be public. Colonel Hawk got a hold of me back in '94, that was what he told me. Major General Williams got a hold of me and says, go public. Public is where the safety is. And you're right, after a while, you leave it alone. The other thing is, I'm sorry about Burns leaving, but we were at the National Press Club. I can't remember what one it was with Bill. But in there, it's against the law to go there without, the CIA have to have a name tag that says CIA. FBI's got to say FBI. NSA's got to say NSA. So I went there with James Fox. He's filming it, and I said, what the hell is all these government people doing here? And I use the term government because it's a collective. And he says, well, I guess they want to listen to it, They want to hear what the 14 people have to say, And so that is one case. I guess those are MIBs, I guess, I don't even know what that means, so. The other one is Kit Green, who works for Bigelow Industries. And by the way, Bigelow has a unacknowledged special access program. I think that John can talk about that too, where they're working, to get all the MUFON reports, and they're developing another technology. And the way this works with unacknowledged programs, by the way, they're black departments. You can't track the funding, you can't track anything. If you're a president of the United States or Congress, you're just as clueless as everybody else. They can't track it. And you can't do a FOIA request on it, or nothing like that. So anyway, about 4 or 5 years ago, Kit Green, who's working for Bigelow, there's 10 doctors and scientists that work, and they arranged a meeting in Rockford, Illinois. We got it in the book, it's called The Colloquium. And I had my attorney there, by the way. There was no way I'm going to go there with Kit Green. He used to be a CIA analyst back in '69, remote viewing and all that stuff. And anyway, so I did that with him, and there's a collective within that organization that are looking for the way to track this technology, okay? Apparently there was 50, this is what Green said, so this is hearsay, this is what Green told me. He says that there were 50 people that had immediate contact, direct contact. Of that, 2 are alive, the rest were dead. No, nothing nefarious there, I think they're just old, I don't know. And the only 2 ones alive was John Burroughs and me. They offered me a full disability from the VA. I said, what for? You guys, I'm healthy, okay? And I said, what for? Well, here's what we're gonna do. You give me, this is what Green says, you give me full access to your medical records, and the VA records, and then you go to Stanford Research Center up there at our medical facility. I want you to get your DNA tested. I want to do an MRI, and went on and on and on and on and on. I said, okay, what's in it for me? He said, what do you want, money? No, I want to know what's the purpose? What's good? What's coming out of this for me? What am I doing? Well, you'll be part of a database. Okay. Well, first of all, you're bought and paid for. I knew that. And one thing I wasn't going to become is bought and paid for. And you want to call Men in Black? Okay, call them that. And I turned it down. Of course, somebody else accepted it because I'm not disabled. And so that was in my recent MIB ones. But they always show up at every event I'm at, whether it's usually a National Press Club, especially in Washington, D.C. So it's nothing, I don't know if they're there to monitor, I doubt that. I think they're there to intimidate, you know? Hopefully they shut up, and intimidate these guys. That's my little presentation, because that's 5 minutes, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Don't you worry about it. It's not a bad thing. How I look at it is reverse the question. Am I a threat? The only thing I'm a threat to is a flimsy wicker chair and a pizza. Okay? How can I be a threat to anything else? Well, apparently, by divulging certain information that should not be divulged, maybe you just got to watch what you're putting out there, and that's something I actually do. My wife knows that. But does it really matter? No. Intimidation seems to be an ongoing issue, but and we always find anytime you have an event, going to an event or whatever, there's always something. Always something, somehow, some way. We've had issues too frightening to even talk about. And all I could say is this is a dangerous field. And there's a reason why it's dangerous, is because there's something here. Okay, folks? What it is, I'm not sure we have the total answer for that. And I keep reverting back to it's more about us, who we are, what we are, why we are, than whatever it is that we think is either out there, in there, or what other space-time cookie jar, wherever they're coming from. So that's what I got to say, folks. I only did it in a minute.
What should I talk about here? There's lots of things I could say. It's not overtly, it's covertly I've been approached, you know. But one thing, and this is before Jim contacted me in 2010 actually, it wasn't in the end of 2010. 13 years before that, is it 97? Nick Pope walked into my local pub. Goes up to the bar, gets himself a drink. I'm thinking, I know that guy, and I've seen him in a magazine. I need to go up, because I had an experience in '93, so I thought, well, I'll go over and talk to him and introduce myself. So I got chatting to Nick Pope, and he was interested. He was interested in the experience I had in '93. So, you know, we swapped numbers, and then we met up in the same pub several times, actually. We was chatting about all this sort of thing, because I was thinking that the experience I had may have something to do with the UFO phenomenon. And so we talked about that. What I had to say to him, because of the connections I was making, because I was actually researching stuff at that time, I was researching into my own experience, kind of went over his head a bit, you know? And he didn't really get the connection. So then we went our separate ways. Jim contacts me out of the blue in 2010. He has no prior knowledge of my meeting Nick Pope in '97. Nick Pope never told me. You know, I was a nobody, you know, I was on the North, I just had an experience that was a life-changing event for me. But I was researching into that, and that's how I became an author of the book. My first book was out in 2005. So it was kind of weird. At the time when I met Nick Pope was talking to Jim Penniston, and he was involved in the REM incident. Then Jim Penniston, as I said, he contacts me out of the blue in 2010 to give me this code he wants me to look at. Other than that, yeah, in 1999, I approached Jack Safari, the physicist, and he gave me something to look at. And the reason why I'm contacting him because the insights that were coming to me after my experience, I realised he was working on many black hole white holes at the centres of subatomic particles. And there's a kind of same insight I had after my experience. So I had all these kind of connections, making all these connections. And before that, I was an ignoramus before that, before that experience. And I didn't know any of this stuff, this experience, it kind of just changed my life. And so Jack Safari asked me what I thought about a UFO phenomenon, and he was into the propulsion side of things. And he gave me a kind of test question, and I answered it, and he put me on his exclusive email list. And the people that were on that list, the recipients list of these discussions that were going backwards and forwards, were the aviary. People that were, known as the aviary. Certain CIA people, Kit Green was on there at one time. And Ron Pandolfi. John Alexander, Ron Pandolfi. Hal Puthoff, Ira Einhorn. Ira Einhorn, does anybody know who he is? Yeah, he was put in prison for murder, wasn't he? And I got talking to those guys. In the discussions, I would have discussions with these guys. And it's funny that I was talking to these people between 1999 and 2002. And then Jim comes out of the blue and asks me to look at this code. And when I was talking with Nick Pope in the pub, I remember handing him some of the work I was researching, because it wasn't quite getting what the experience was. And amongst those papers I gave him was stuff about Giza and the Great Pyramid and that's what came up in the code. So what I'm saying is there's some weird synchronistic associations that I've had with people over the years that were either directly or indirectly linked to what I'm doing now with Jim and the Rendlesham Code. And it's like a synchromesher phenomenon, So it's kind of weird. And I know that I'm being watched as well.
Good question. Yeah, this question is for anyone who wants to answer. Two-part question, really. One, what really gives the powers that be, whoever the MIB report to, what gives them the ability to have as much power as they have to shield us from the truth? And then another way to put it is, extraterrestrials are really, truly spontaneous and fantastic, and they're interdimensional. How is it that they are blocked from this minor man-made blockade from the rest of the world getting the information that they have, which would benefit all of mankind?
That's a good question.
When you say blocking information, the word, and this is one of my specialties, which I didn't really talk about, I only alluded to, is occult. Occult means to obscure, to hide. So you have ancient history going back, whereas knowledge is occulted. It's occulted, and the end user doesn't get to see how things are conducted or made. And the entire, you can go into theology and the entire structure. So much of the work, there's a sort of a source code to the way the politics of this world, undercurrent of the government. It has a lot to do with the work of Dr. John Dee, if you want to study Dr. John Dee, and his work and what he did. That's a whole other story. And there's a censorship factor that goes into occult principles, which ties to geometry, which is where IQ cuts off with geometrical understandings of things if you do a standard IQ test. so that there's a pathway, but you know, you have to kind of butt up like a goat climbing a mountain to get at these things. That's from an underlying occult perspective. Of course, the governments and all these things feed and are actually, you can even say, conducted or regulated. There's Tibetan lamas that have tremendous hidden influence on the world and stories of this. I mean, this gets really deep. But anyway, that's just my perspective on these things and how I study it from, not necessarily at the governmental level.
I just want to talk a little bit about the origin of the Men in Black. The first time the Men in Black were ever mentioned was by Albert Bender. He had started a UFO group, he had a magazine that was out there, was making a big name for himself. He was really only in business for 1 year. But the guy was very heavily into the occult and the paranormal. His attic was all full of this stuff. And he was visited by the Men in Black, but they weren't aliens. It was a demonic encounter. And everybody that reads his stuff, and who's the other guy that we were just talking about? His stuff's at the Clarksburg Library, big name. But he wrote a book on it too and said that this was a demonic, this was an occult encounter. And there's a lot of this in the UFO field when you talk about abductions and what the spiritual side of it. So there could be the alien thing going on, the government thing going on, and then there's the demonic thing that's going on. And I believe that, and a lot of people believe that also. But then you have the Men in Black that are aliens. They're kind of robotic, unemotional, and we've all heard of those. Then you got the Men in Black, that's the government agent, right? And an interesting thing, when I was researching something for MUFON, came across a letter from James Oldberg from years ago, before he was well known, and he mentioned that the Air Force would dress up in suits out of their uniforms, and they would go out on UFO investigations and interview people. And that was like another origin of the Men in Black. They were really Air Force people in suits because they didn't want to be in uniform. So the whole Men in Black thing is a really interesting story. You know, there's all different types of Men in Black: government agents, possible aliens, and also demonic encounters. And that's the way they were dressed up. Gray Barker was the guy. You remember the name of his book? I'm gonna have to go out and read one of my books because it's all in it. I just can't remember.
Well, I know that there's some Men in Black are Air Force people. And there's a unit stationed just outside of Washington, D.C. that has men spread out all over the country. It's an intelligence unit, but it's given a support group name. And they were set up early after World War II to, when Russian bombers came over, the idea is that some would be shot down and they wanted to reach the air crews if they bailed out or whatever and capture them and then interrogate them. Well, this unit exists and they, you know, were skiing men, climb mountains, and they were great in many ways. They could go anywhere. But when the UFO mission started, they were given the mission to go to people who had seen UFOs and question them and usually tell them to shut up. Basically, that's what they don't tell your friends, that the UFOs are there, that people don't need to know that. The reason that all of this was quiet, from what I understand, is that when the Roswell incident occurred, and even before then, they captured some UFOs, and in the UFOs, there was dead humans. And they thought that the aliens may be doing something to the humans. And they made this the highest classification in the government, much higher than nuclear and all the rest of it. Even though I was briefing 4-star generals every day, I never got that clearance to get in and find out what was going on. do everything like MUFON knows about sightings and our crews seeing them and they're up there, etc. My boss, Bob Woods, was the UFO officer for Military Airlift Command. And he could launch fighters and do almost anything you want to think of to do with UFOs. He had that power. And there's UFO officers in almost every base that this is considered something that's real and important.
The end goal address is, if witnesses are intimidated and we have a dead pool of over 300 UFO researchers, how has nobody been caught? Well, think about a regular murder that you would see on the news. Why do so many people get caught? It's sloppy, it's unprofessional, and almost always it's somebody they actually know. If somebody is just going to commit a random murder, they're pretty difficult to catch. If you remember the terror that the DC sniper inflicted a couple years ago in Washington, DC, he was so difficult because it was just seemingly random. So if dead pools aren't to be believed, why are these things successful? They're targeting researchers they have no relation to, usually seem to work in pairs, highly professional, and maybe a lot of you have seen the CIA manual on assassins. That was leaked a number of years ago. John's spoken about it. And it's out there online for anybody to see, and you kind of read through it, and the assumption is, well, that's just for the bad guys. And you sort of conjure up this idea of terrorists in some cave in the Middle East. But a lot of people believe that that manual is actually used for even people here in the homeland that are a threat to national security. So I think that's part of the reason, if you are to believe dead pools, that it is so very successful and nobody's ever really identified in a lot of these cases.
All right, when he was talking about that, how many of you ever heard of the CIA gun that they have to give you a heart attack? Anybody?
CIA what?
Give you a heart attack. All right, they have an umbrella. All right, this came out in congressional hearings back in the 90s. They have an umbrella, and they have the umbrella, and the only thing they do is push it at you, it hits you, and it dissolves. They will kill you right on the spot. And the government has a bunch of that stuff. You know. But anyhow, this really wasn't the Men in Black, if you could say they were, okay? Back about 7 years ago, an investigator, MUFON investigator from Pittsburgh and myself, were investigating a bunch of triangular craft coming up the Monongahela River. And they would come on a certain night, and when they got to a certain spot, they vanish. Well, needless to say, anybody knows anything about Pittsburgh, there's a building there that conducts naval research. All right? And so we started asking a couple of questions. Well, it wasn't the Men in Black, but it was the men in the FBI that came and seen us. And they said, you guys better cut the crap and let it go, which we didn't. But again, this has happened a couple times on my side. I was told to shut up and just get away from it. But you know, anybody who knows me, I just sit there and laugh and say, oh, okay. I mean, you know, come on and visit me, I love you. But anyhow, that's the truth. I mean, like he said, the guys that get knocked off, it's so planned that you don't know what's happening. I mean, they die so, and you wouldn't even know they were dead. So.
Some of them commit suicide and shoot themselves in the head twice.
About the Men in Black. How did they get away?
Next question. I think
we covered it.
Next one, I'll take another question.
All right, new question.
New question.
New question.
Could any of you share some light on the mysterious force that some of our government people have suffered in Cuba and I've heard in China, where the hearing is impaired and severe headaches, it causes severe headaches, and nobody really knows what it is? Do any of you know?
I think it's Chinese food. Because it's all cat.
If you don't know, just pass it down.
Anybody know about that?
Anybody know?
No
Can
idea.
you repeat the question? 5G? 5G.
5G, yeah.
Does anybody know about that? The government officials at embassies, etc. that they're getting hit with some sort of frequency.
He knows something.
The British know.
The British know? Come on up.
We have some Navy.
Come on up. The British are coming. They can stand right here in front of the camera like Benedict Arnold and yell the British are coming.
Yeah, actually the Brits know about this, and that's because also there's some US that knows. It's actually millimeter wave. It's actually what they're going to be using in 5G, but they carry it with a carrier wave. I'm actually writing a textbook on directed energy. We have a think tank, and we have one person who works for a various big firm, which we can't say what it is.
Can you say your name?
Yeah, Dr. Trent Nichols, I'm MD, and actually they do know the cause. And it's fairly, and the real scary thing is that already you've had dramatic brain injury from 5G relay stations in San Francisco with firemen. So actually the state of Maryland's actually outlawed it already, 5G, and so has actually DC. And that's really nasty stuff. But it's huge. You're up against the big companies like Verizon. It's going to happen probably in Philadelphia, and it's going to cause lots of problems.
So question, if they've outlawed it in DC and Maryland, are they going to be able to override this? I mean,
Probably not in those two places. But isn't it interesting that's where the politicians are?
Sorry, wait. Could you share with the audience what you told me outside?
Look to the camera when you say it.
What was it? I can't remember.
Could you share with the audience what you told me outside about the fine structure cluster?
Oh, okay. One of the things that's going on, which not many people know, is actually there's several papers which show DNA actually is damaged, actually acts as an antenna. And actually our human DNA actually acts as fractal antennas. And this was shown by a number of people, but it's actually published. And what happens, another thing, that there's an increase in iron in men as we get older. And that's one of the reasons you're seeing these people, these politicians like McCain and Kennedy, they're all dying from glioblastomas, and that's from cell phones. Because they were early adopters of what we call the very analog cell phones. And in women, it's actually, they don't get that, they actually get acoustic neuromas. And after 10 years, people that hold it close to your head, if you read the small print, you should be about 3 centimeters away from the phone when you're making a call. So we're going to start seeing a lot of women, because they're always constantly on the phones driving their cars. Actually in Maryland, it's illegal to drive a car and use a cell phone. So there are states that know about this, but it's going to be causing tremendous damage. It's preventable, and the public has no comprehension of what they're doing.
Is it worse in your car if you have your car?
Well, yeah, because you got, that's the other thing, radar. All the new radar.
There was something you said about the fine structure constant, though, wouldn't you, in relation
Yeah.
to this?
What about the router in your home? What's on?
That isn't known yet. Yeah.
What did you say to me outside? You said that my discovery of this fine structure constant in the message binary code is not just authentication of maybe a message from an intelligence, from an advanced intelligence.
Yeah, that actually, he was just showing about one of the constants that's out there, and actually that is tied into quantum electron protein transfer.
Whoa.
And that's the same number, 1.37, what's the rest of it?
035.
035, yeah, I just showed it to him. And that's one of the, I'm working with a group that's actually working with photons for early Alzheimer's, and we're using near-infrared elements to put photons into the brain. And we're the only one at this point that's actually getting people who already have early to mid Alzheimer's to actually be able to draw a clock 15 minutes till 10.
So you said that was a warning?
Yeah, that's probably a warning from the future. So we're thinking. Wow.
So I have one more
Okay,
question.
Give me a question.
Does scale it down?
What's that?
Does using something like earbuds scale it down?
Yes.
On your phone?
Yeah, and the other thing is to always try to message and also do voice, speakerphone, yeah. But you gotta get your kids to do it, and the kids bring it.
We got to get to the next question.
Thank you.
What's the next question?
Well, I'm really interested in 5G. I'm so complicated cell phones and computers. I'm freaked out by 5G. Gary knows it's 100 times stronger. Who does he think it's promoting? Does he think they're trying to kill us off? I mean, I'm going to tell my congressman that if they do it, he comes to my funeral.
What's your question?
My question is somewhat related. It's a question for the whole panel. Has your knowledge of UFOs and conspiracy and different things, has that changed your thoughts on God or spirituality in any way?
I would say that I think that when I first started this was like 34 years ago, I think it has to a point that I believe that maybe God, as we know God, God is up. Everybody says God's up, right? Okay, they're allegedly up. I mean, is it possible that God actually rides in a UFO? I mean, really, if you really look at it, you go back with Adam and Eve, okay, and I guess the, whatever it was, gave the apple. From then on, he would slither on his feet, so that, on his stomach, that was reptilian, and they've been around since the beginning of time. So, is God tied into that? When you get the bad angels, the good angels, it's all one thing. I think religion plays a big part in it.
I've gone to Catholic school from kindergarten the whole way through high school. Our daughters go to Catholic school. And so religion is very important to us. So when I read a lot of books, especially a lot of the New Agey type UFO books with a lot of teachings in them, I think to myself, does this contradict what I already know? And if I start reading really dark stuff, I want to get away from it. But interestingly, most of it is right in line with what I've already been taught. And what I think is really interesting is New Age teaching in general kind of gets scoffed upon, but I feel like mainstream physicists are sort of arriving at the same conclusion scientifically in this direction that New Age is kind of going in this direction, and they're getting to the same end point. So I think it actually strengthens my faith, and I think that we're going to see a greater synthesis of all of these things together. So I look at it as a positive thing overall.
Back when he was talking about the electronic effects with the heads and that, look up, if you get a chance, look up the woodpecker effect. The Russians did it back in, I think it was the 80s, and they was hitting people in our embassy with it.
Yeah, the embassy, yeah.
I don't really know that much about it, but I remember reading something about it. It was called the woodpecker effect.
Well, personally, I feel that the Bible is one of the best UFO books ever written. Now, you have to look between the lines or know certain things. Like I spent a lot of times in the Middle East, and if you live in the Middle East, hardly ever is there clouds in the sky, except for certain times of the year. Very often in the Bible it talks about clouds that pick up people and take them away, from Jesus on down, that the clouds have evidently take people away. And they talk about them being powerful and so on. In other words, you have to read between the lines and pick out the words, but it's talking about what I call UFOs all the time. And I think that's very important. I'm a Christian. I've always, grew up as an acolyte in church and sang and so on. I was in the Episcopal Church, which is not the Catholic Church, but in any case, we have similar beliefs. And I see the fact that many of the UFOs help people. Now, I work with some abductees. Abductees often claim to be healed by certain aliens. In other words, there's a certain amount of the abductees who deal with the aliens seem to be talking about angels, if that makes sense to you. And that at least some of the aliens are here to help us, and they are physically helping us in places like the Mayo Clinic. And I encourage you, now you people are much smarter than most of the people outside, because you know a lot about this subject. If you see somebody who you might think looks maybe a little different and looks too good, because many of the aliens are very attractive ladies and very attractive men. Think in your mind telepathically, oh, you're an alien, and see what they do. You could say, if you're an alien, I'm doing this out loud, but you do this as quietly. Put your right finger on your nose, or put your left finger on the nose. And if they do that, they are listening to you and telling you that they are here. And there's more here than you realize. I think there's one right there.
Well, I have a different perspective. Okay, I would say I went full circle. I believed in God. I went to church until I got divorced in 1994, and I stopped going to church, and I didn't step into a church again until 2014, 20 years later. I had no interest in UFOs until I was 40, 41, joined MUFON, because I was just writing books on 2012, and said, let me write a book on UFOs. Got really deep into it, and all my books kind of have this underlying theme of, is it evolution, creation, genetic changes to us, alien intervention? And interestingly, and not by coincidence, on the 20th anniversary of my divorce in June 6th of 2014, and it's not a coincidence, something showed up in my house. Okay, it wasn't alien. It was clearly demonic, and it was. And, you know, I know a lot of people laugh at this. They don't think it's real. I will tell you, the Jesus-Satan battle is real. And when people say Jesus is not the Son of God, Jesus was just a prophet, I did the first Ancient Alien Conference with Van Daniken. And I was the only person not on the cast that was at that conference in Minnesota. When I asked Eric about Jesus, I didn't even finish my question. He pounded the table and he said Jesus was just a man. He was not the Son of God. He was just a prophet like Muhammad. They took a break. History Channel spoke to him because it was being filmed. He came back on and he said, let me just clarify what I said. And he said, I was a good altar boy and I'm not trying to start a new religion. I will sit here and tell you he is and he has created a new religion. That convincing you to believe that God's not real, that the aliens created us or the aliens upgraded us. And I will tell Giorgio, Van Daniken, Bill Burns, who said it yesterday, and anyone else, you better be very careful with blasphemy, okay? I experienced this stuff firsthand. I'll take a polygraph, I know it's real, I drove it out through Jesus Christ. That thing came for me, and it got worse, and you know it, and it got worse and more progressive. It came to the point, it was almost like the Exorcist movie, with movement in the ceiling, pounding on the walls. It was unbelievable. I was shrouded in a shroud of black darkness. And, you know, I screamed out, you stood in the presence of God and rejected him. And I called upon Jesus Christ to bind him and send him from my house. And I saw a veil of darkness just lift in about 3-4 seconds, and it was gone. Okay? I knew what I was dealing with there. I was dealing with angels, which I couldn't see, and demons, which I could hear. And they were poking me. See this little spot up here? This has been there since 2014 when I got poked by one of them. You see that spot? Dry spot? It's been there since then. Okay? I know that part is real. Whether there's life in space, there should be. Mathematically, statistically, there should be. The Bible doesn't say there's any life in space. And the only way that aliens are real is if evolution is real. Think about it. Or God created them and just didn't tell us about it. It wasn't in the Bible. Without evolution being real, there were no aliens. Can't be. Okay? Unless he put them out there. So I just tell you, it's in Matthew, God does not look lightly upon blasphemers, okay? And if you're going to walk around saying that there is no God, or that we were created by aliens and upgraded by aliens, well, when you die, you're going to meet Jesus like we all want to. He's going to look in your eyes and he's going to say, I never knew you. You're going to hit earth like a bolt of lightning, like Satan did. I believe that 100%, and no one's changing my mind. And I hope the alien thing is real, but I want to meet them at this point. And so far, there's zero evidence of life in space. Okay? We all want to believe the stories. I love the stories. I wrote my books. But I put a $30,000 reward out there last year. Where is the physical, genetic, blood, DNA of an alien? Where are the hybrids that are walking around that you all say there is? Okay? So this might alternative perspective that you're not going to like. But I know exactly where I am now. I came full circle in my beliefs. My belief in God and Jesus Christ will never ever change from where it is now, because I forgot about him for 20 years, and on the 20th anniversary of my divorce, I got woken up. He never forgot about me, and that's what's important.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, and I was going to say fundamentally, no, my spirituality, views on spirituality, and God haven't changed, but I did learn something in my studies of the occult. And through various synchronicities, it's in my book, Synchronicity and the Seventh Seal. Basically, I can't go into the details, but I discovered the entire secret of Freemasonry. And keep in mind, this isn't known by many Freemasons. If you're a Freemason, you may not know this if you're a 33rd degree, because they hand out different degrees to different people, like a shell game. But anyway, the secret word of Freemasonry, which is Mahabane, means what? The builder. This is a faux word. The real word is a letter. It's a Hebrew letter called Shin, S-H-I-N. It looks like sort of 3 prongs. The earlier version of it was the devil's pitchfork or the Neptune. Shin. And Shin means tooth. It ties back to the boar, the wild boar, which was the tribe of the Hebrews. Shin, Shinar, capital of Babylon. It's a feminine symbol. Shin, Yod-He, Shin, Vav-He is the literal original word in Aramaic. Yod-He, Shin, Vav-He gets transliterated into Yeshua, Isis, Jesus. Shin is the top of the pentagram. It's 5 letters. Spirit over fire, air, water, and earth. So what the witches use? They use a Christian symbol. The Christians use a pagan word. It's all the same. Shin in Hebrew means to change spirit. To change, to means spirit or change. You see it in the Japanese word Shinto. Shin, Tao. Shin is spirit. Tao is way of the spirit, Shinto. The Chinese recognize the word Shin as meaning heart. This is an incredible secret word that is no longer secret. And when he's talking through his own filter, John is, which is fine, but it's that word, it's that principle that you exorcise a demon with. The same thing. This is what I learned. It's an incredible word. A lot of my work is co-opted or ripped off, but nobody ever touches this. They don't talk about it. I can even one of my books even goes into the virgin birth and how it's all biologically possible. So yeah, it's actually, you can't have a rigid belief system. I never had a rigid belief system, so it didn't change it in that sense, but it, of course, learned and taught me on a deeper level. All these things, and we all have our own filters. Mine tends to be kind of analytical, Capricorn, Virgo rising. You can relate to that. It tends to be very analytical. So, but anyway, that's what I wanted to share.
Wow.
Okay, to answer the original question, my beliefs religiously are reinforced, and I think I'm a little bit better than I was when I went in there. I'll tell you right now, up to that point, I really never talked to God, but I talked to God that night. Right? Oh God, let me survive this. All right? And you know what? He let me survive it. And so I think my religious beliefs are a lot better now than they've ever been. Do I go to church all the time? No, I'm a real bad Catholic, okay? No, I hit the main ones, you know what I mean? The Easter ones and Christmas. But that, I think that answers it for me. These guys here, this is so heavy, I started smoking here. You know, I don't know, I just never looked at it so deep as that. And, but I just think it reinforced my religious beliefs.
Marijuana will be legal shortly.
There you go.
I might need some.
Who knows?
Who knows?
My beliefs, I don't, Julie knows, that's one word I'm not really fond of, belief. Ideals, beliefs. Religions. I went to a seminary, so I graduated from. I was brought up very rigid European Catholic. I have multiple religions in my family. I'm ethnically multiple ethnics, which relate to religions: Jewish, Italian, Catholic, Polish, Ukrainian. I'm like a mutt. Same things when it comes to beliefs, a mutt of beliefs. So I respect all beliefs and ideals. When confronted by evil, paint whatever name you want, give it a name. You know, semantics are interesting things. But the bottom line is that evil, when confronted by evil, pray to whatever is close. You have that strength in, and find strength in something. And this is what we see in most people of some deep conviction, that when you summon something, whatever it is inside of us, and that to me is God. Call it whatever name you want, I don't care. To me, God is just quite fine. It will hear you. It is in, like in Corinthians, it's when we're at our weakest, you will have your strength, okay? It'll be given to you. Now, I don't paint any picture of being, the dualities in life is how we create illusions. Right, wrong, black, white. You'll have your most striking illusions when you have duality, okay? And we live in this world of duality. If we want to see anything clear, we have to obliterate duality and realize there's something else beyond that. Something that would be light or whatever, a deeper form of light, if you want to envision that. But for me, coming into this field, it dragged me in closer to my whatever is human. And I think I'm starting to get a better idea of what that is. You know, science says that we are an error that has survived best in a natural environment in replication. You have a change in the design of something, and the one that best suits that environment will survive. Now, when you look at religion, we are chattel. We belong to something. I would hope that deep inside we summon something, okay, that is truly God. This is common factor throughout the universe, that somehow has a purpose, and maybe even has us somehow involved in that, that will strike a chord in all of us universally to become something that will redefine what we are currently so pitifully defined by today as a human being. And to me, that's where I came, that's where I'm at, and God bless all you.
I think I'm creating it all myself. So thank you for being part of my waking dream. Now, I try not to believe in anything. Maybe it's the wrong way of saying it. If you could, and this is something, an analogy I've used, think of yourself being in a circular room, and you're at the centre of that room, and there's all these doors leading up from around that room. And you can open those doors and they'll all be reality tunnels, they're all leading down. And you can open each of those doors and you can look down. But if you start venturing down, then you get lost. You've got to stay in the centre of that room. And you can't really have any belief. And you can't really limit yourself to any belief. Because if that belief is ever disproven, then you go with it. So you've got to keep yourself centered, neutral. Try not to believe anything on the scent. You can look down each of these doors, look down each of these tunnels and see where they're leading, look at the probabilities. But don't believe in anything 100%. You know, just believe in yourself. Really can only do that. Because it's all an illusion. As what you said about duality. Yeah, it's got to be beyond duality. It's got to be something that's non-dual. The truth is something that's non-dual. It's not good, it's not evil, it's something else. Yeah.
It's greater than everything.
Yeah, that's mine.
You know, another interesting thing, I don't know how many of you ever heard of Joe Joseph. He used to be a investigate UFOs down in Florida, and he deals a lot with abductions. And a lot of people, when you're in this field, they've said that the aliens were there, and they said, leave in the name of Jesus Christ, and they left. So there's got to be a connection somewhere.
Alright, so it's kind of for whoever wants to answer, or only or whatever. But do you guys think, going back a couple topics here, maybe a little bit, but do you guys think that, you know, you're using electronics more often than you probably ever did before, you're using more cell phone and more technology. Do you believe that everything that you're doing because of your position is a little more tracked than others? And on that subject, do you believe that it's, you know, how deep does it go? How much information are you allowed to put out there before you're stopped, in a sense? That follow what I'm saying.
I'll pass that to you, say.
Everything and anything you say and do this very meeting, everything that's being heard, is being said, is being heard. There are no mysteries, there are no secrets on earth, period. No secrets on earth. Got it? Get it in your head. So when you say, oh, it doesn't matter, I'm not doing anything wrong, the definition of wrong is constantly being refined and defined. Believe me, it's just a matter of time when the crosshairs hit your forehead. And you'll know that because you're doing something different that is countering what may be an agenda. And you may be doing something instead of wrong, but something in the long term substantially better and right for humanity on a greater purpose. So don't be naive. The internet is also the World Wide Web. It is a way to track and to monitor everything you say, you do. And notice when you're typing in Word now or anything, it's filling in before you start going. It knows who you're talking to, what your subject matter is. The profile is already being made. AI is capturing your identity, okay? You can be replaced. And if we start living in caves behind electronic devices instead of interacting eyeball to eyeball, will we ever know who's who? Never. And so realize technology is also an encumbrance. It is an issue. It is that albatross that's around our neck. So as much as we love it and we've come to find ourselves addicted to it, it is just another form of addiction. Do not lose touch with our communications, our humanity. Okay, let's build our humanity. Teach our kids to put the cell phone down, talk, get together, do something. This is serious. I got to put mine down first. Yeah, no kidding. That's a problem, huh? But the other thing is the effect of this on us. It is affecting everything. It's affecting our genetic code. It's affecting. We are being replicated and replaced for some purpose, and I don't know whose purpose, But we're changing. We are being changed.
That could be Ancestry.com when you send your DNA.
Yeah, it's a profile, dude.
Yeah, I've been asked this question a lot over the years, especially when I was the state director here for 10 years. And my answer was always on the radio shows that I think the CIA has debunked the UFO so much that outside of this crowd, if if you're outside talking to somebody and you say UFOs, you'll always see a smile. Right? I remember a date I had. I'd just been on the Anderson Cooper show in 2012, and I had this date, and I said I was really proud of it. I was on the show, so I'm telling this woman, and her jaw almost unhinged as I'm telling her about why UFOs are real. Her jaw was like down here. I'm looking at her. So what is this, a hybrid? I never saw a mouth open that thing. But I was like, she scared me. But the CIA absolutely has debunked the field. So I've always said to people when they say, have you ever been threatened, like the MIB question before, I say, no. Why would they threaten us? Nobody believes in it. If you think about diversity, who's the smallest minority in the country? It's the UFO crowd. Of course. Isn't it really? We are the smallest group. We need protection under affirmative action is what we need. Seriously. They don't take us serious because everybody laughs. I did a radio show last week, KDKA, and there he is laughing. Well, don't you believe in little green man and alien and Area 51? That's it. Nobody takes it serious. But it's interesting now with the whole DeLonge thing and the Tic Tac and all of that. What are they trying to accomplish here? And when this is over with, in episode 6, where Chris did episode 2, we'll find out if this is Oak Island and there's no answer, or some sort of disclosure that, hey, this is alien technology. Because DeLonge said that this has the ability to move through time and space and the water. It could move through the ocean. I want to get on the demonic thing, but he also said these people should be thanked because they're battling demons. He said that. I'm just telling you. And Harry Reid said they were concerned about Satanism when they got the money. So, read Nick Redfern's Final Events. Collins Elite, do you know about the Collins Elite?
Yeah.
There could be a whole different side of this, which is why they got you looking here and up. And there's something else, and a lot of people have said this. But I want to see what happens at the end of the show. Is this our soft disclosure that there is life in space? Are we just hanging forever? Or do they now get more funding for Trump's Space Force, which has been in place since 1980?
John, just why do we need the government to tell us that they exist?
Right.
Before we can move forward. It's like parents. It's like getting parents' approval.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good point. You need an authority figure to tell you something most people do for it to be believable. If you're simple-minded, and they know that. I mean, Hitler knew it, and the CIA, everybody knows that if you say something enough times, it'll be believed. And if an authority figure tells you man-made global warming, but if the temperatures were 2 degrees warmer 1,000 years ago, 4 degrees warmer during the Roman Empire. Oh, we don't want to tell you that part. And the climate tracking starts in 1850 when they tell you the highs and the lows at the end of the mini ice age. They don't tell you that either. So we're easily manipulated. I don't remember what the question was.
Careful of the fake news.
That's right.
I don't think I have
You gonna tell us about the 300 that were killed?
Real quick, I already think that I would be done. I don't try to protect myself anymore. What I worry about is students. After students of mine graduate, some go on to really awesome jobs. I just had a former student of mine get a job at NASA. I'm really proud of her. And so I'm most careful if I'm talking to students over text, over Messenger, they have jobs in the military, things like that. I'm really, really cautious that I don't say anything. I don't ask them any questions. I don't try to put them in a spot because I don't really care as much if something happens to me, but I would feel absolutely terrible if I got any one of them in trouble. So that's my big focus. I think I'm already done.
No comment.
I think we got one more question, John, and we're at about an hour and a half here.
What about the trip to Mars that Elon Musk is planning, Robert Bigelow's trying to get there? Do you think that's why they're disclosing a lot now? Because they're going to surprise us, wow, there's something here when they go to Mars?
I don't think I've got anything to say on that matter.
Elon's, he's welcome to go there if he wants. You know. He could leave his money here, but he'd go.
I'm not sure, how many people, has it been released that there's water on Mars?
Yes.
Has it been released as microbes? Life?
Yes.
We knew that, what, 4 years ago? I have a friend at JPL. They knew it, they just kept trying to confirm it. Yeah, it's amazing that, what was the rest of that question? I forget. What was it? No, I don't know, everybody.
about Elon Musk going to Mars.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
about these spaceships to go to Mars.
Oh, it's human.
Letting stuff out like that.
I think it's just human. We were explorers. We always have been. You know,
Going back home.
You know, we're just explorers. That's all that is. I think. You know, the next step after that, we'll try for something else. I mean, I think it's in our DNA that we're explorers. We're never satisfied. It goes back to that human thing you're talking about.
Of course.
We're humans.
Yeah, we're like Earth. We're all over the universe.
Yeah, we're just done. We're not satisfied. But it might bring up a different concept. Maybe we are first. You never know.
Happy carbons.
Let me share something about the water thing on Mars. I work for NASA Goddard Space Center.
Give him the mic, please.
Get over here.
Come on down.
This is Gary, introduce yourself.
Greg Martins.
Right.
So I work for Goddard Space Center. Correct me, if somebody knows more than this, please speak up. But what I believe is the current position with NASA is that, yeah, there's plenty of water there, but they still have a dispute over whether or not the organic material they found is biological or it's generated by another means, like methane or something, or that it's not.
It's in debate.
Yeah, in debate. So if anybody has some else they can say about that, that's as far as I think it is. Like they haven't found any materials in the water that says we're life.
Other than octopus. I gotta stun you again.
Okay.
Fred and I have been to Mars often. Mars, PA is about 40 miles from me. It's about 40 miles from here. The Butler Conference is near that. And is it in Boone Township? Yes. There you go.
That's on the bar.
A few years ago, I gave a talk about Mars, which essentially said there was life on Mars. And I showed 156 slides from the European Space Agency, who have beautiful color shots of Mars. And this was out of Irvine, California at the annual MUFON conference. And I asked the people in the audience if they believed, after my briefing, if there was life on Mars. And they said, everybody raised their hand and said yes. After that, Dr. Wolf from NASA Houston came up and said, you're right, there is life on Mars. Now, I can't tell you that there is because it's classified secret. I don't know if you're saying classification problem, but I believe that there's some life on Mars, and that many of the pictures that I had indicated smoke and water and various shells and evidence of at least life on Mars in the past. So my point is that at least one time there was life on Mars, and there's a good chance there's some left. And where it is inside these tubes. And these are huge tubes, a mile wide and dozens of miles long, that the whole cities could be inside. Unfortunately, we can't see, but I think there are some remnants.
I will try to give as juicy of an answer to this one as I can. Earlier today, I laid out many, many different theories on the Apollo moon landings, but at the same time, I am a passionate believer that right now, we have human colonies on both the moon and on Mars. And officially, the Apollo moon landing stopped because there was no strategic advantage to the United States continuing to go. And to that, I say it's absolute hogwash. Any country that could get a foothold on the moon or on Mars first would have an enormous strategic advantage, and I have to believe that continued. So right now, we would be in a little bit of a sticky spot, because if we do have colonies there, and let's say we may have had them for upwards of many, many decades, now the mainstream, like SpaceX, has the technology to start getting to the moon and getting to Mars. So what do we do about the colonies that might already be there? Do we have SpaceX go to different places on the planet and we try to keep them as separate as possible? Do we have an overall disclosure? And then the other real wild card in this, what is the atmosphere of Mars actually like? Officially, it's CO2 laden, and it's only 1/150th as thick as Earth's atmosphere. But I've done a lot of research into this one, and there are not a lot of independent countries that have been able to confirm that. On the contrary, there have been a lot of scientists throughout history that say that it actually should have a very thick atmosphere. And one thing that I always find fascinating from all the whistleblowers that have supposedly gone there on secret programs like Project Pegasus, it's a tiny little detail, but I find it fascinating. They never ever talk about actually wearing spacesuits there. And so if you think about it, if the United States actually started to explore there with the Viking space probes, which were very successful back in the early 70s, imagine for a moment if the Vikings got there and the first readings they sent back were of a very thick, oxygen-laden atmosphere, which was actually quite habitable. If they disclose that to the entire world, suddenly they're going to be in an arms race to see who could colonize there first. But if they put out the idea, no, the atmosphere is very thin, water will boil right off, it's not habitable, suddenly they've got a window where they can go there themselves. So it sounds pretty extreme, but just imagine for a moment that that's true. You're suddenly going to start getting other private companies that are going there, and they're going to realize the same thing. So they could have a really big mess on their hands. I actually have an article written for the UK-based Phenomenon magazine about the atmosphere of Mars, and it's supposed to be in a future issue. So if it is in there at some point, I urge you to check it out.
Very interesting.
Well, what he just said, I feel like I'm in kindergarten. So I'll just let that one go.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Doucette. I'm the State Director for Pennsylvania. I want to thank you for participating in the conference this weekend. It's been a great success because of your participation, and thank you to the speakers. I ask that if you go to PAMUFON.com, I'd like to hear your feedback on how you feel about the conference. If you'd like to see future speakers in particular or subject matter covered in our future conferences, I'd be interested in hearing what you got to say. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.